Dear brothers and sisters, greetings to you all. For the 14th Sunday in Ordinary Time, we focus on the theme, In God's Compassionate Arms. God's compassion helps us to rejoice and makes us new. Three representations help us to understand this. First, Prophet Isaiah presents God as mother embracing her children to nourish their growth. Second, in the letter to the Galatians, Paul speaks of embracing the cross of Christ to experience peace and mercy and become new. Third, in the Gospel according to Luke, Jesus empowers the disciples to extend God's compassionate outreach. In this mission, the disciples are able to rejoice because they belong to Jesus and act according to Jesus. The first point of our reflection is that God nourishes us like a mother. The text from Prophet Isaiah, chapter 66, verses 10 to 14, presents God's compassion and the restoration of humanity through maternal imagery. The maternal imagery shows Zion as comfort-giving mother. She gives comfort because she has received it. And the people of Jerusalem are invited to rejoice in light of what God is going to do in their presence. It implies two things: the birth of her children and God punishing the enemies in their presence. Even though the address directly concerns the servants, it is addressed to all who wish to listen. Further, people who are looking expectantly for God to act are the ones who gain new strength both in the present and future. Comfort is for those who have mourned previously over Jerusalem, but now they will be nursed with consoling breast, signifying the flow of the wealth of nations, peace and prosperity. Jerusalem takes upon herself the image of a mother. The newborn babies are nourished by suckling on the breasts of a goddess-like figure, Jerusalem. But in all this figurative imagery, God is the one now spoken of as mother. Further, peace is not just the absence of conflict, but an overflowing of well-being and prosperity. Normally, the image of a river overflowing with an overwhelming force is destructive by sweeping away everything. But here it is positive, meaning abundant well-being. The entire community will rejoice like flourishing grass. Here a negative connotation is again turned into a positive one. This amplifies that there are two groups in the community: the well-being to God's people and condemnation of God's enemies. The second point of our reflection is the cross of Christ gives us real comfort. Paul, in the letter to the Galatians, helps us understand that we become new only by embracing the cross of Christ. For Paul, peace and mercy flow from the cross. The cross of Christ is essential to Paul's preaching. Paul, in his first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 1, verses 23 to 24 speaks, "We proclaim to you Christ crucified, the power of God and the wisdom of God." The preaching of crucified Christ embodies Paul's relationship with the crucified Messiah. As a result, the example of Paul is totally conformed to Christ. In the midst of trials, Paul's life is an imitation of covenant faithfulness in the Messiah's vicarious atonement of his people. So living to God in Christ meant boasting in the cross of Christ. Paul proudly says, "The marks on my body are those of Jesus." Paul invites his community and the world to the cross of Christ for true comfort and rejoicing. As we see in Paul's letter to the Philippians, chapter 3, verses 18 to 19, those who do not embrace the cross of Christ remain as the enemies of the cross of Christ. The cross of Christ for Paul is peace and mercy that transforms us into new creatures. The third point of our reflection is belonging to Jesus and acting according to Jesus. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus empowers those who follow him to continue his mission. They exercise the divine power by visiting places and homes, leading a simple lifestyle, healing the sick, and driving out demons. Though they went as lambs among wolves, divine power keeps them safe. In this compassionate outreach, the disciples truly rejoiced. Jesus shared his power and mission with those who followed him. They in turn shared it with others. In this exercise, we notice well-being flowing like an overflowing river and humanity flourishing like grass. We notice these imageries in the prophet Isaiah chapter 66. In the mission mandate of Jesus to his disciples, we see God's extensive, compassionate outreach. To conclude, God, like a mother, embraces us and nourishes us. God wills our well-being only. So God turns our sorrow into joy. But the real joy is embracing the cross of Christ for the renewal of the universe. As followers of Jesus, much more than subduing the serpents, scorpions, and the strength of the enemy, we truly rejoice in our belongingness to Jesus and his earthly and heavenly mission of compassion, healing, and inclusion. May these insights help us to be compassionate. And I thank you all for your patient listening.